All right, welcome back to Blue Grit Radio. This is Eric, and I am joined today by a special guest, Austin. How are you doing, my man?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So, a little introduction to Austin. Austin is he is a martial artist, and he is recently getting into MMA, so mixed martial arts. And I'm trying to remember the order of how I came to meet Austin, but I think I saw your event that you're putting on with Alfie, and it was a jiu-jitsu invitational, and I hit him up on social just to see if we could get out there to do recruiting and public engagement, which is for me as a hiring sergeant and just a cop in my career, I think it's the same goal. I think it's the same purpose. So, and just being a total noob in jujitsu, I was like, hey man, like I'm down just to interact and see what I can learn. I'm also temporarily supervising our team that teaches defensive tactics. So I was extremely humbled and extremely grateful to receive this very open welcome, from Austin, to come on down to the event. Do you want to talk? Do you want to introduce yourself? And I was like, yeah, man, I'm down to do that, and then just be a fly on the wall and just talk to people. So I was able to meet a ton of people from your gym, Austin, kindred up north of where I am. But yeah, I just want to, if you can just introduce yourself to the listeners, and we'll go from there.
My name is Gabriel Austin Daffron. I'm primarily jiu-jitsu athlete. I've had two professional MMA fights, and I've had a couple amateur as well. But for the last probably 5 years, I've been competing on the professional grappling circuit on events like EBI, Eddie Bravo's Invitational / Combat Jiu-Jitsu. I promote jiu-jitsu in the PNW. I occasionally will run shows like that. And I was blessed to have you out and, talk to some people. I was curious, did you get any contacts from that event?
Not directly, and so I don't know because I had a corrections officer there. I don't think so, but I think for me, it's so much less about the specific event and if a lead pans out per se. It's so much more just about networking and making connections, right? So, like I said, it was cool just to meet, guys from your gym, guys from different gyms. Connect with people that have trained with cops. You've been a suit actor. We'll get into that later. With as far as like training with police and offering your service in that angle. And then people that are currently working at the academy, it was great to meet them on the day and then see them when I'm visiting the academy. So I think it's all like very collaborative and just how do we make better, safer, better trained cops just for a safer community.
Yeah, I definitely I felt kind of bad because I felt like there wasn't a ton of engagement. It was the first time having someone out kind of in that role, and I was like, man, these people don't seem too social.
No, it was cool because I mean that was my first one. I've gone to a larger competition, but it was just a different vibe. And yeah, we did get names and numbers, and I'm talking to an experienced officer that might be thinking about coming over. So that technically would be very fruitful for a recruiter in that regard. But at the same time, like honestly, it's just showing people that we're out there. That event, not to sound cheesy, but I think it's all helpful, right? Like that event and interacting with some kids and handing out some stickers and stuff, that might be that much more helpful that they're not scared of the cops later. Or, their parents are like, you know what? I know that, so and so is hiring. Maybe I'll go out and hit them up because, my nephew is looking for a job in public service. So it's all
Okay,
good, man. Yeah, it's all good. And I'm very, very grateful and very appreciative to be there. And I'd love to do more stuff like that.
for sure. We'll definitely let you know the next event we're doing.
Yeah, fantastic, man. So, where did your grappling, your, primarily jujitsu, where did your martial arts exposure start?
It started in 2010 in high school wrestling.
Hmm.
At the time, I didn't really think of it as like a martial art, but I definitely think of it as a martial art now. I pretty much do wrestling all day. It's
Yeah.
jujitsu, but relatively, very similar.
Mm-hmm.
And after high school, so I graduated 2014, and right around the end of high school, I started in jiu-jitsu. Um, and I've been doing it ever since. I've cross-trained striking because I always wanted to, hop into MMA. That's always been a goal of mine.
Yeah.
So once I got my blue belt, I ended up doing 4 amateur MMA fights. I won all of them,
Nice.
but I ended up splitting gyms, and it was just ended up at Mat Chest MMA, which it just the striking program and everything just wasn't what I was looking for mixed martial arts. So
Mm-hmm.
I ended up focusing a little bit more on the jiu-jitsu, which I already had that background in wrestling. So I was able to kind of get to a little higher level quicker, and I ended up starting to compete on bigger events, and just watch professional jiu-jitsu, EBI, and all that. Watch Eddie Cummings, Gordon Ryan, all those guys coming up, and I was like, man, I want to do that. And within a couple of years, I ended up getting a call to the show.
Nice. Awesome. So, I see such a range of what people are capable of, especially now being involved with training new officers and supervising a lot of those units. And it does seem like people that have a background, as minimal as it might be, even if it's like a year of wrestling, how much that does for their physicality and their body awareness. You speak a little bit to that because you're the suit actor. So for the listeners that aren't familiar, like Austin was one of the guys throwing on the padded, we say red man suit or the padded full body suit and headgear, and basically being the aggressor or the suspect that police trainees, police recruits are training around, to try to put their new skills, sometimes fledgling, brand new, basic, bare bones skills to the test.
Yeah, I ended up doing suit acting. I think it was 2018. It was before I was like teaching jujitsu.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I needed a good side job, and Kyle McCutcheon, one of the owners at Kindred Jiu-Jitsu, he works at the police academy,
Yeah.
and he ended up getting me a job as a suit actor down at the Criminal Justice Training Center. So I got to work with young cadets in training and kind of do mock scene scenarios, and I was the bad guy that got to get arrested. As far as having a little bit of a background in wrestling or any martial art, I think the biggest thing is learning control. Whether that's having control over another person, or more importantly, having control over yourself, being able to control your body, learn new skills, and
Mm-hmm.
have an understanding and awareness of the different positions, kind of how it feels to be in those positions, how it feels to control someone, how it feels to be controlled, and just really having that discipline to practice a martial art and learn body awareness and all that good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. So like I have a lot of really close, buddies that grew up wrestling. One of my best friends was an avid wrestler through his childhood and through high school. And although it's not a large part of his life now, I've always credited, and he would credit too, just his hard work ethic to the 2-a-day grinds and the weight cuts and all those things that they used to do back then. But yeah, just as far as like the grit that is developed in wrestling and legit martial arts, I think it's that self control and discipline that you're talking about that it's pretty unparalleled.
Yeah, I think one of my jujitsu friends, they're cross training wrestling right now, and they just went to a wrestling club. And at one of the clubs, they had a saying, and it was, wrestling's not just a skill set; it's a mindset.
Mm,
And I think that's the biggest thing that translates over. Obviously, with all the body awareness and the skills and stuff, but it's just that mindset, and having the ability to work hard, towards a goal, and put in effort every single day at a practice, pushing yourself to that level that, wrestlers can push themselves, and being able to like make weight, weekend after weekend. It's definitely a toll on most, young adults, most teenagers or middle schoolers that are, learning wrestling through the public school system.
Yeah, yeah, and like when I think about self control, where my mind went was actually um, control of your emotions, and what I mean by that is kind of tied in with the mindset, but not panicking when you're in a not ideal situation. You're highly uncomfortable, right? And I think that anyone newly in martial arts, I can sympathize with that. This morning, I was in a lot of really bad situations. With more experienced guys rolling, but it's just I've already had a lot of that indoctrination and stress inoculation where I know I'm in a safe environment, and I've been in unsafe environments on the street, but just hey, like just keep your head in the game, and you can be uncomfortable for a while and then recognize at the same time, like, you can tap and it's all right. But yeah, I think that outside of a lot of things, you might not have that opportunity to get uncomfortable. I mean, you can get in the gym and you can go in the air conditioned gym and do your 4 sets of whatever. And don't get me wrong, I spent lots of years doing that. And I still enjoy, a good lift, but it's just something different about that grind that as it applies to police work. And that's what we're talking about a lot on the show is, a lot of people hitting me up and, knowing that I'm down to offer fitness advice. But generally, more than ever now, I'm like, hey, I know what it's like to be in scrapes on the street and feel like pretty strong and pretty good cardio, especially for my size, strength, all that. But just the simple exposure to martial arts, the simple exposure to jujitsu, I already recognize, and I can think of a lot of arrests I was in, a lot of struggles I was in, where just simple, mindset control, emotional control, toggling that down using some basic skills and techniques and leverage would have been way more effective and way less tedious.
Yeah, a little, cliche, but getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. Whether it's striking, you get cracked in the face, you get cracked in your nose, you get wobbled a little bit, staying composed enough to keep your defense up and not reacting right away and getting mad, or it's grappling where you're going with someone and you're just completely helpless. And there's going to be a point where there's always going to be someone bigger, stronger, faster, more knowledgeable when you, especially, when you start off and you're just getting going. It's pretty much everybody's going to have, more knowledge than you.
Mm-hmm.
And a really good portion of the people are going to be able to put you in situations where you just can't do anything. And you got to learn how to, go with the flow and wait for your opportunities and not just freak out. Because the worst thing you can possibly do is, get as mad as possible and exert all your energy. So then you're just completely dead and you can't even think. So I really think, martial arts in that sense provides, a lot for people. And I think there's other things too. Like it's hard to do, but there's other physical activities like running where you could like go to your absolute end and push your body, to the point where you can't walk the next day. There are weightlifters that could, lift a lot of weights and push their body, but you don't get the same skills that you'll get from martial arts, like being composed in bad situations, like somebody getting violent with you and you being
Mm-hmm.
able to be, cool, calm, and collected, and then deciding what happens. The more you train, the more comfortable you get, with the violence, and the less I think less emotional you get. There's sometimes where you feel the emotions, but you just can't act upon them right away.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and the carryover is huge. I mean, I think that there's those that adage and those sayings. A lot of martial artists, especially professionals, but they don't get in fights because they're not I'm not talking about what's on, the little Twitter battles and trying to promote a fight, but um, I'm talking about just a lot of trained individuals don't need to rise and escalate things. They're pretty calm. They know that they can handle the situation if it goes bad, so they're not going to engage in the puffing and all that. A lot of times that's coming out of lack of confidence and right trying to compensate. So I think what you're saying, like the calm, cool, collected, that's huge, especially for new people that are coming into this job or considering the job.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of that too just comes from insecurities where you just you get a little anxious, you get that fight or flight, and I think the more you train, that's still going to be there. Like you're still going to be a little nervous, but you just get more familiar with it, and you become less insecure. You're confident in your abilities.
Yeah, hugely, hugely. And so remind me, and you've been involved with coaching as well, correct?
That is correct. That
Okay.
is
Yeah, talk
correct.
to me about that and what that's been like.
So I've coached wrestling for a while now, since 2015, and I've coached jujitsu since 2017. So it's really rewarding. It's interesting. You know, uh, Taking the back role and kind of seeing the other side of things, where you have to be, being a competitor, you got to be selfish.
Hmm.
But being a coach, it's the exact opposite. You got to put in the time, the effort into another individual, and really invest your energy into someone over a long period of time. People, they come in the door, they're not going to be a high level athlete in a year, especially in jujitsu. It's going to be tough. So you got to kind of play the long game, where it's like you have a freshman wrestler, sophomore wrestler. It's like they're going to be competitive 2 years from now. It's and 3 or 4 years from now, that's when they're gonna make their run. At possibly being really competitive, but it takes time. It takes time, and you have to have patience, and you have to set goals, for yourself and for the athletes. Definitely, one thing I've learned is you can't want it more than they want it for themselves.
Mm.
So it's that balance of being structured, holding the room and yourself to high standards, but also not crossing that line where it's like I can't want it more for an athlete than they want it for themselves. And I've struggled with that, and that's I've definitely learned some lessons there. And you can only help someone as much as they want to be helped, and do your best to put them in a position where they want to be. It's like everybody has different goals. Um, I can do my best to kind of lead someone in the right direction, but it's different for everyone.
Yeah.
It's I'll relate it to running. It's like when you're running a race, there's going to be people who are maybe running a 4 minute mile, and there's going to be people who are trying just as hard running a 7 or an 8 minute mile. It's not to say that person that's running the 7 or 8 minute mile sucks. It's just that's what they can currently do, and that's they're pushing their VO2 max the same level as some hyper trained people that maybe are running under 5 minutes.
Hmm.
Maybe they have really crazy genetics and they're able to break a 4 minute mile. There's some people just not as gifted, and they just have different goals. There's some people that will dedicate their whole life to the sport, and there's other people who are looking for a hobby and looking to have fun and looking for fitness and self-defense. And you gotta meet the person where they're at, and kind of have
Yeah.
an understanding of what they're trying, what they want to do.
Yeah, I love that. It's all relative, right? And it's contextual. And man, I think that's a really good application to leadership. I mean, coaching is mentorship, but I'm focusing on that one line that you said where you can't want it more than the player, right, or more than the athlete. And I think a lot of people could visualize this through examples of parenting, like people they know, or maybe they experience it themselves. Maybe it's like the typical, like the dad coach, like, the glory days, like pride of town, and then
Yeah,
the kid,
exactly.
right? Like they're living vicariously, but it's like, man, like you gotta, I think as leaders, like, and you're very much a leader in that respect, is like you pave the way and you foster that growth. You give them all the opportunities and the guidance, right? If they're wanting to take the step, but you can't force them to drink the water.
Yeah, I totally agree. At the same time, if they are willing to take those steps, you got to be willing to go out there and die for that person. You gotta have their back 100% of the way there. If you can help them out, even just 1% for a competition or something, that is a huge difference, and you got to make it easy for for the athletes, especially I've had the chance to work, with a couple high level athletes. Aislinn O'Connell, she was the first person to win combat jiu-jitsu slash EBI in the PNW. And I got to kind of see, everything that went into that, her making the weight, her upsetting the tournament, coming in there as a purple belt, winning a black belt tournament. And on a short notice, she got called up the last, 2 weeks of the event. You got to have their back 100%, 100% through the process. When you do have somebody who is putting in the work. So it goes hand in hand, but you can't overstep. You can't overstep and cross that line where it's just like you're trying to push someone to be something they don't necessarily want to be. They have to make the choice and go after it, and you gotta meet that person halfway. So
Yeah, I love that, man, and like that's why I'm gonna I'm gonna talk about it a little more. But yeah, being a new sergeant, and like wanting to achieve things, and because this is a lot of police and prospective police are going to be listening to this. For the next up and coming police leaders, like to try to force someone that doesn't have goals to have them. I mean, guide them, right? But like I was trying to like brainstorm sitting down in front of them like a goal session, and it's like it's just not going to work. If they don't want it, right? But be available there. Just coach them up a little bit and take your small wins. But I love what you said about being an athlete and making it selfish, right? You have to be self-focused in every little thing dialed in, but coaching to be the opposite, right? So that there's a huge leadership translation there, which is you have to be that servant leader to adequately serve your people. And so I hope whoever's listening, whether they're in or out of first responder work, like there's a direct translation, whether it's your work people, whether you're a leader of your family or just your friends, right? Like that there's a huge lesson to be thought about there.
yeah, for sure. I couldn't agree more. And it again, it's such a hard balance because for myself, like I'm obsessed, and it's just like I've learned from experience that you can't force that upon other people. But at the same time, I do think you can encourage people to have goals and just small victories, small wins. Uh, just by being there and supporting that person, and it doesn't have to be they don't have to be the best officer, the officer of the year, or the best out there. It's just starting with small little goals.
Yeah, it's finding your motivators, right? And like some people, they do want to be do want the hard assignment, so they need to pave their career a certain way. And other people, like, it's a solid job, it provides for their family, and they're really good with that, right? And there's nothing wrong with that, right? It's just as long as you're engaging, you're serving with compassion. Yeah, man. So I see you, on social, and you're traveling all the time. Now you're in that fight life, and I've definitely been back in the day, like into UFC enough to follow like fight camp promos and even like the reality shows and what that lifestyle is like. And so it's a grind, but like it's kind of crazy watching you. It's cool watching you, but um, yeah. What talk about what that life is like now?
It's definitely, it can be hectic, going from, New York, to Cancun in a month and a half, just going all over the place, different time zones, teaching in Europe, going from, competing in mixed martial arts to some professional grappling competitions. It's something that probably isn't sustainable long term. But while I can do it, I'm gonna keep pushing. I actually just weighed in this morning for an event in Bellingham that's on Flow Grappling, Battle Grappling. And the week
Okay,
before that, I was in New York for Emerald City Invitation, and I weighed 135. So it's tough on just like
dang,
maintaining the diet and the travel and the all that goes into it. But I love doing it, so it's not a job.
yeah. Did you ever think? I mean, of course, at a certain point, more recently, like yeah, you thought this would be your life as your world and your professional life is around grappling and jujitsu and training and coaching. But when did that really materialize, and what did you think your life would be like before that was really a thing?
Um, I think in like 2017, 2018, I thought I could compete at a high level, at a professional level. I thought I'd be able to do it. And that year, I really competed in every single local tournament possible and started to travel a little bit. I think that year I had 77 competitive no-gi matches, and I told myself by the end of the year, if I don't win a national tournament, I'm just gonna get a full time job and kind of focus on that. But luckily, in December, I was able to win finishers and kind of meet my goal of winning a national tournament by the end. But that was actually kind of the same point that I found, the police academy and being a suit actor too, as kind of a part time gig, so I could have a little better income and be able to still train twice a day, train 3 times a day. I remember for that finishers camp, we are doing 6 a.m. training at the academy, and I would eat absolutely nothing throughout the day, and then I would like drink a coffee in the afternoon,
Mm.
and then I would go do like a 7 o'clock class, and I would just rinse and repeat. I did that for like 4 to 6 weeks, and I made 125, which is like a pretty low weight class for me.
Oh my god, yeah.
Um, but it's definitely a sacrifice. Like it's you're not gonna like make any money in grappling. Like I have, BJJ instructionals, like I teach, like it's a hard living. Eventually I'm going to have to do, be a full-time instructor and really focus on coaching and running an academy. Right now I'm lucky enough to primarily be focusing on my competition career and
Hmm.
just building up my brand. But I'm still coaching, but I have very little responsibility when it comes to running the actual academy or everything that goes into that aspect, where 100% of my focus is on teaching the classes. I only coach very very few athletes that I actually coach, and then most of it's my training, whether I'm striking or doing my grappling sessions. There's a big focus on my athletic career right now, and there is a little bit of focus on my coaching, but definitely in the next couple of years I'll have to be doing the academy thing as a more career job.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Thank you for sharing that. So, what are your big goals right now? We talked about goals earlier, and you're obviously a very driven person.
So number one, win combat jiu-jitsu. That's been one that's hanging over my head. It's the Super Bowl to me for grappling. It's the realest event out there. It's jiu-jitsu with slaps, and there'd be something they would nag at me a little bit if I didn't get a combat jiu-jitsu title by the time I'm done with jiu-jitsu. Number two, compete on a national organization, or compete abroad in MMA and get signed to a bigger organization. Those are two big goals I have. One in jiu-jitsu, and then one in MMA. I'd like to compete for an organization like ONE FC, Brave, something like that. A bigger organization by the time I'm done, competing, which I still have hopefully a handful of years, but the incentive has to pick up a little bit in the next couple. For the MMA, I need to get to past the regional circuit and on some bigger promotions. Right now, I'm competing on I'm competing on relatively professional promotions for the grappling. Honestly, right now the pay's better in grappling than it is in MMA, which is kind of crazy because there's a lot more risk in the MMA. So hopefully within the next year and a half, 2 years, I can build up my record to compete abroad or compete on a bigger two in mixed martial arts, and ideally become a champion in that organization. So those are the two big goals. And the longer term goal would be, be a champion in the organization. So, July 30th is the next combat jiu-jitsu. I have all intention of winning that title, and then hopefully I ride off into the sunset and focus on my MMA and my going through the regional circuit. I'm just coming off of my first loss. I fought a really tough opponent. It was his 9th professional fight. It was my 2nd professional fight, and I was pretty certain. I was like, man, I'm gonna smoke this guy. I'm gonna submit him. But there's levels to the game. He had a lot more experience. He was a crafty veteran. He was from Mongolia. Just different style, different level of balance. Different level of mixed martial arts, and I was humbled. But I'm not deterred in any way, and I know that's the level that I'm going to compete on. The guy, he's, I think 2 fights ago he fought against a guy who's signed to the UFC. So I mean, he was a high level competitor, and I think that's the only way to get to a high level is hold yourself to high standards. And compete against tough guys.
Yeah, I love that, man. And just to rewind before I forget, but I'm glad you explained what combat jiu-jitsu is, because I learned it very recently. And if people are hearing this, they're like, "Wait, jiu-jitsu is slaps?" It's like, I mean, from the layperson, and maybe you can offer your perspective, but this is like, hey, if you're losing in jiu-jitsu and you're getting tied up or choked or whatnot, or maybe you're tied up in a position, and your opponent is on top of you, slapping you. This is illustrative to the fact that they could be pounding on you, but they're not, right? They could be beating the crap out of you because your hands are under you or under them. What are your thoughts on that, or is that accurate?
Yeah, that's relatively accurate. It's just it's kind of putting it when you're in like really bad positions. There's no consequences in jiu-jitsu, and combat jiu-jitsu just adds those possible consequences for being in silly positions.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. And then to what you were just saying, as far as your loss, and you kind of went there. So it's very humbling. What else do you think that did for you, or how do you bounce out of that?
Well, how I bounced out of it is, I just beat a top 10 ranked grappler on Flow Grappling last weekend. Mm-hmm. I took a month to train my ass off and go compete against some high-level competition at the end of the month, and I'm going to do my combat jiu-jitsu 100%, and then this fall slash winter, I'm going to get back after it, and I'm going to go kick somebody's butt, and just be motivated. Don't be defeated. Keep moving forward, and get better from it.
I love that, man. And yeah, that humility is huge. And I tell my new guys, I want to see you hungry and humble. And that's like, I want you to drive forward, and I want you to check your ego and just be a constant learner. And part of that is not beating yourself up, right? I think as a young man, I thought humility was to be modest and quiet and right, like not be cocky, right? But it's not just that. And I would say it's actually a lot more to the fact where you can take your licks and not beat yourself up. You got to keep moving, or else it's actually you are suffering from that ego. If you can't handle a loss, no, like pick yourself up. Let's be resilient. Let's keep moving. So I love that you went there. There's just so many lessons. I knew this was going to be an awesome conversation, not just because you're a grinder and because you've interacted and helped train law enforcement officers, but just being a martial artist and a coach, I just knew that there's so many lessons to be learned, especially for our young officers out there. So I do have a few questions that absolutely do tie into someone joining or starting a new craft or profession, and first responder work very much so. So you have a hectic life, and new firefighters, new cops, they have certainly a hectic life that they're adjusting to, shift work, working overnight, all these things, and you're changing it up. But you have it hard for sure. So, and you're traveling, you're changing time zones. So, what helps you in that? I guess staying nimble and still keeping to your strict practices with regards to health, with regards to nutrition.
As far as just health and nutrition.
Yeah, and just let's start with health and nutrition, and maybe just lifestyle, like staying nimble in that way.
I think for me, for staying nimble, it's just you got to relax. You gotta you gotta breathe. You gotta have that time for yourself, just to reset your mind. Just like trying to slow things down. I think if you're constantly in that go go go, it's hard to eat healthy. It's hard to train. It's hard to you get stressed out. You make mistakes. You go to the fast food. I think take your time. Take some time for yourself, whether it's 10, 15 minutes. Try to have some kind of breathing practice, some kind of self-awareness practice. I think that can go a long way. And food's hard. Food's hard, especially for a lot of people. I think you gotta enjoy what you eat. You gotta find that balance between enjoyment of food and then health, your body, and being a machine, being able to be able to be an athlete. So for that, I really think the two go hand in hand. The more you're on the go, and the more you're stressing yourself out, the more likely you are to make those fast food decisions, the Burger Kings, the McDonald's.
Yeah.
So I mean, take that time. Maybe think twice before going there. Think, man, do I really need this, or can I get by with fasting? Can I get by with almonds? Can I get by with some healthier choices?
Yeah.
And don't be too hard on yourself when you do make a dumb decision. Just make the right decision more times than you make the wrong one.
That's wisdom, man. And I've learned a lot of these lessons the hard way, right? And know thyself, right? And so I think, I don't think intermittent fasting, and it's pretty trendy right now. I don't think it's the bee's knees, and it's probably not right for some people, but there's nothing wrong with practicing and just learning that if you don't eat for 12 hours, 14 hours, you'll be okay. I made it part of my practice, during one phase of my career when I was on K9, that I was doing it, and I would start my shift, and I might have gone 12, 14, 16 hours not eating, and then run a mile with the dog, and it was fine because my body adapted. But it taught me so much in that, yeah, you will be okay, right? Same time, you're saying eating almonds, and like moderate, right? Like I could crush a bag of almonds. So yeah, I think to give yourself grace and focus on self-care, those are huge takeaways for sure.
Yeah, and I think too, just not having that identity of like I always do this or I always do that, and I always eat healthy. Like sometimes, like okay, yeah, you make one bad choice, just make sure it doesn't lead into your next decisions.
Yeah.
If you're working within, I think that 80-20 rule, you're doing pretty well.
Yeah, solid. How do you stay organized, right? Because you have travel, you have events, you're still coaching. How do you keep yourself all orderly?
I think just have a schedule, have a routine, have a schedule. It's definitely harder when you're out and about to have some normal schedule down. But
Mhm.
if at home, just have your schedule. When you're traveling, do your best to make it as similar to what you do at home.
Yeah, excellent. And then mindset. I mean, you have clearly extremely strong discipline. You were talking about you fighting at 135. So what's your walk around weight then?
I'm about 45, and I can cut to 25. 25 is my lowest weight.
Yeah.
I compete a lot in grappling at 35, and I've even done some MMA at 35 as well. So it's about 10 to 12 pound cut, just depending on how, I'm anywhere from like 48 to maybe at the lowest 42, just depending on, my diet, my lifting routine. Am I trying to be a little heavier going to the event? Am I trying to be a little lighter? Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's huge. And I think that, I hover around 180. And so I recognize it takes quite a bit to cut 10 pounds. And I notice a huge change in my physiology and how I feel and lighter on my joints. So I just want to paint a picture for uh, you know, those guys that might be a bit bigger. Like he's not talking about cutting 10 pounds of you. Listen to the numbers he's hovering around, right? So you're talking about cutting like 20 pounds at a lower body weight, just to illustrate that level of dedication. So, what does fuel your mindset and your resolve?
As far as cutting weight or just in general?
Man, I'm just talking about the discipline, the extreme discipline required to do things like that.
I like to have a practice of suffering. I like, I'm really into, history and stuff like that. And I'll go on like YouTube rants of, watching warriors throughout history and watching, oppressed people too throughout history,
Mm.
like, the Holocaust, stuff like that. Uh, you know, uh, China, who's it? It was there's the dictator over there. But just putting myself in that scenario of like, man, I would have died so quickly. I would have, I couldn't have, lasted like a week in these people's shoes. And I'm complaining about cutting 5 pounds. I'm
Mm.
complaining about not being able, skipping a meal. And these people are out there, not eating for weeks, living off of the ration of like bread and stuff like that. So I think it's good for everybody just to have some kind of sacrifice, some kind of thing you're giving up for a short period of time, and trying to relate to people throughout history, whether it's a warrior, whether it's somebody who's suffering out there, and putting yourself in their shoes and kind of imagine yourself in that time.
Yeah, I mean that's great. I love that you went there, and I'm chewing on this, right? And so, um, no pun intended, but yeah, just talking about like suffering and how that can build this resolve and gratitude, and being in the moment. And yeah, our problems are not their problems or the problems that are existing around the world. And so, as far as dialing in this hardened mindset, yeah, that's huge. Have you, I guess, tied in with the question you bring up the Holocaust? Like, have you read Frankl, like Man's Search for Meaning? Are you familiar?
I am familiar. Yes, I have not
Yeah.
not read the whole book, though. I've
No, that's me.
uh,
Like I know excerpts, right? And but I that's on my list of things to read, and I think that uh, that message says it all. That you need purpose, and you can get through the hardship.
yeah. I gotta do some seminars over in Germany, so I gotta visit some of the camps, and it was definitely it was eye opening. You get to listen to the audios. You get to kind of feel it a little bit. So it was a really good trip.
Yeah. Fantastic, man. Well, this has been a fantastic conversation. Like I said, I was very optimistic, and this has surpassed my expectations. You're a martial artist. Martial arts and philosophy go hand in hand, and so they're definitely. It's not a surprise that there are many nuggets of wisdom that are very helpful, not just for me, but those that will listen. I'm positive. Um, so, Austin, where can people find you, get in contact with you, or follow along in your awesome adventures that I'm following along?
Duck underscore Jitsu on Instagram and Duck underscore Jitsu on YouTube as well.
Fantastic.
So
And that will be in the show notes. So it's duck, like the aquatic bird, fowl, waterfowl. Um, yeah. Any parting words? Anything you want to leave for the listeners?
no, thanks so much for having me on. It was a good time. Hopefully, obviously, different professions. Hopefully, you guys get something from it, and you guys enjoy the talk.
I surely have, and I'm positive it will. So thank you again for coming on, man.
All right, thanks, brother.